श्री आनंदमूर्ति की विजन चैनल पर आप सभी दर्शकों एवं आमंत्रित अतिथि डॉक्टर सिंधु पौंड्याल जी का मेरा स्वागत और नमस्कार। आज हम लोगों के समक्ष एक प्रख्यात व्याख्याता डॉक्टर सिंधु पौंड्याल जी, जिन्होंने अपना पीएचडी आईआईटी मुंबई से किया है और वर्तमान समय में दर्शन शास्त्र विभाग में सहायक प्रोफेसर के रूप में केंद्रीय विश्वविद्यालय त्रिपुरा में कार्यरत है। इन्होंने श्री आनंदमूर्ति जी के विविध योगदानों पर पुस्तक लिखने की परियोजना में जुटी हुई। इन्होंने 9 विषयों पर अपने पुस्तक में इसको सम्मिलित किया है। योग, मनोविज्ञान, तंत्र और रहस्यवाद, भाषा शास्त्र, सामाजिक गतिशीलता, संगीत एक जीवन शक्ति, कला और साहित्य, सामाजिक आर्थिक सिद्धांत और नारी मुक्ति को इन्होंने अपने पुस्तक में सम्मिलित किया है। इन विषयों पर विस्तृत जानकारी प्रस्तुत करने हेतु हम आमंत्रित करते हैं डॉक्टर सिंधु पौंड्याल जी को। उससे पहले मैं आचार्य दिव्यचेतानंद जी को धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं कि उन्होंने श्री आनंदमूर्ति जी के योगदानों को बुद्धिजीवियों के बीच पहुंचाने का सतत प्रयास कर रहे हैं। फिर से मैं डॉक्टर सिंधु पौंड्याल जी को हमारे दर्शकों के बीच श्री आनंदमूर्ति जी के योगदानों पर प्रकाश डालने के लिए आमंत्रित करता हूं। डॉक्टर सिंधु पौंड्याल जी।
धन्यवाद धर्मेंद्र सिन्हा जी। मैं पहले तो आपका आभार व्यक्त करना चाहूंगी कि आपने ये सारा एक आयोजन किया। हालांकि ये वर्चुअल प्लेटफॉर्म है और हम लाइव जा रहे हैं बहुत सारे लोगों के समक्ष। So at the outset, I thank you. I offer my sincere thanks to you for giving me a chance to share some of my ideas with the world virtually. And in this process, let me first thank Anandamurti, Shrii Anandamurti himself, because he has been an inspiration he has been inspiration to me past almost 8-9 months, because these are the months, last first lecture which I presented on Anandamurti ji's Ananda Sutram in the month of July 2021, and since then almost every month our very dear Swamiji, Swami Divyachethanand ji, has been instrumental in pushing me constantly to present something or the other on Anandamurti ji. So in fact, one of the webinars we have organized in our department, the Department of Philosophy, in the month of November, and that too was Shrii Anandamurti's contribution to philosophy. And then we had many eminent speakers on that. So all these, while attending all these different academic platforms, I somewhere suddenly it struck my mind, why not to introduce Anandamurti ji into to these intellectual audience. Not only that, in fact, the students, because when we talk of Indian philosophy, most of the time we have seen that it had confined either to only to Vivekananda. When we talk of contemporary Indian philosophy, then Vivekananda, Jiddu Krishnamurti, then we have Radha Krishnan and Gandhi, K.C. Bhattacharya, then Ambedkar. Then somewhere that struck my mind, why not these thinkers like Shri Anandamurti or P.R. Sarkar and also Osho Rajneesh. So these two thinkers I have seen somewhere, left out in these galaxy of scholars, among these galaxy of contemporary scholars. So, and then while discussing, because I am constantly in touch with Swami Divyachethanand ji, and then while talking to him, suddenly that idea came to my mind, and for which I am so grateful to him, that he inspired me to write. He inspired me to read more on Anandamurti ji. And this book project is, I believe, this is just now at a very dormant state, I can say. It is just a plan which I sketched through, and then I just shared it with Swamiji, and Swamiji said, why don't you include this and that topic and try to make it as a book, so that you can make it a lucid kind of understanding of Shri Anandamurti ji. Try to compile it in a in some 5 to 10 chapters, and then make it available for the students who say wish to read in the degree level. So this is the plan. So by planning this book, of course, that's again my I think it's my own personal agenda, that to bring Anandamurti ji into the mainstream philosophical culture, where we have thinkers like Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, and all. I just want to, because contemporary Indian philosophy, I believe, is incomplete if we do not contribute, if we do not include the contributions made by the thinkers who actually gave not only a theoretical philosophy but a practical way of life. And this has been the guiding force with which I thought of introducing this one. And the another significant approach, or another significant way why I want to do this is that if we do not have so we have these original texts written by Anandamurti ji, and then there are researches, some researches, scattered researches, either in the in economic domain, or in, say, psychological domain, or in yoga, or in, say, even in scientific domains. So when we talk of Anandamurti's writings, Anandamurti's foundational approach, what he wanted to say in theory, and what it becomes when he talk of a practical approach to that, somewhere I see a gap, and because of which there are group of people who are following him, who are taking him as guru, who are taking him as a god-man, and then worshipping him. And then there are intellectuals who try to just who are indulging themselves in writing about him, or he's giving credit to the contributions made by him, and then there is a gap. There are followers who do not have any access what these people are doing, and then there are a bunch of people who are writing, doing, and then they somewhere for some, yes, there are again who belong to both the groups, but then there is a gap, or I may be wrong, but because I started reading Anandamurti during pandemic, so I did not have any access to actually go there and see whether there is this mitigation of these two boundaries are there or not. And with this aim, I started this. So to mitigate this theory and practical gap, one, and the second approach is to bring Anandamurti's philosophy for the mass. So of course he is a mass leader. He was a originator of a cult, but then somewhere he was sidelined, he was blurred under the wide spectrum of other intellectual traditions. So with these two aims, I thought of writing, but then again, this is, as I already said, it in the dormant state. And what I'm going to do in this, and what will be the methodology, what are the ways through which I wanted to incorporate these different arguments in the within the text, I'm going to show you. So is it possible to share this PPT, Dharmendra ji? Is it possible to share the PPT? Okay. So let me share. Can anyone say, is it is it is it visible? Is it visible?
No, it's not visible. Sorry to interrupt. It's not visible. Dharmender ji, I think she should make co-host. When she will be co-host, she will able to share the documents, PPT, whatever she wish. धर्मेंद्र
Exactly.
जी, या प्लीज मैम को आप को होस्ट बना दे प्लीज.
And it is getting hanged.
This is my due to the internet network, but now you are co-host and you can share your PPT.
Hello? Am I audible? हेलो.
हाँ मैम, सुनाई दे रहा है, आपका आवाज आ रही है.
मैं एक्चुअली ये शेयर करना चाह रही थी पीपीटी, लेकिन वो शेयर नहीं हो रहा है.
ये इसमें दिखा रहा है कि हैज स्टार्टेड स्क्रीन शेयरिंग.
हाँ, लेकिन उसके बाद एकदम हैंग हो गया है. अभी मैं जूम भी नहीं ऑन कर पा रही हूँ.
अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा. रीस्टार्ट मैम करके आप रीज्वाइन कर सकते हैं क्या? फिर हो सकता.
इट्स गेटिंग हैंग्ड. हेलो.
लेकिन आपकी आवाज पूरी तरीके से आ रही है.
हाँ, ऑडियो मतलब आ रहा है, लेकिन मैं जूम भी ऑन नहीं कर पा रही हूँ. अभी ये एक इंट्रोडक्शन वाला चैप्टर, ये उस पे. अच्छा, एक मिनट, अभी खुलेगा लगता है. सॉरी फॉर दिस इंटरप्शन. आई बिलीव
हाँ
नाउ इट
खुल
इज
रहा है.
विजिबल.
हाँ 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 हाँ. लेकिन नॉट रिस्पॉन्डिंग, पावर पॉइंट नॉट रिस्पॉन्डिंग.
That's what it is happening. I don't know what is the case.
पावर पॉइंट नॉट रिस्पॉन्डिंग, इट शोज.
Yeah. 1 minute. Let me try this again. Getting hanged.
स्क्रीन पे मैम आ गया, स्क्रीन आ रहा मैम, लेकिन वो जो कंटेंट्स है वो नहीं आ पा रहा.
Yes, there is some sharing issue, I believe. Let me still figure out again.
अभी सारा स्क्रीन पे आ गया आपका वो.
Yeah, but then there is this, it has become unstable.
हाँ हाँ आ गया मैम.
Just a minute. I'm not been able to access it. Let me just share it. Sorry to keep you waiting, but there is, I think it is because of the internet connectivity. Just a minute. It was all the while, it was okay. Somehow, suddenly it became like this. Just a minute. I'm trying to get it connected. Yeah.
Yes ma'am.
Yes. But then I'm not been able to see the content.
Yes yes. वो धीरे धीरे आ रहा मैम. वो 10th नंबर आया.
Suddenly in between there are too many blank sites that come.
टेंथ नंबर से स्टार्ट है. Started from 6.
Yeah, because I just entered, no, so I think they came like this. Yeah, thank you. I'm so sorry for this interruption. Sometimes because of the technical glitch, it happens. Nevertheless, so the outline is like this, that there is this introduction of why such a, again, because as I already said, there are many thinkers, बहुत से ऐसे लोग हैं जिन्होंने किताबें लिखी हैं, बहुत से ऐसे academical writings भी हैं, जैसे अपने पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंसेस को लेके ग्लोरीफाइंग आनंदमूर्ति जी फिलॉसफी एंड कंट्रीब्यूशन भी है. Religiously and spiritually dedicated texts are also there. But then what is it that, as I said, the aim of doing is to mitigate those 2 points. And to do so, these are the tentative things which I thought of doing. So the whole text will have the methodology. All the chapters, because it's going to be just so I'm trying to make it one book, but then if it is going to be too vast, then we can think of having part 1 and part 2 as well. This is what, because the more I am reading, I am finding too many things to talk about him and in philosophical way. So it is going to be analytical. So the methodology of the whole text will be analytical, historical, critical, descriptive, and hermeneutic in approach. So the tentative chapters, let us come to the tentative chapters. So tentative chapters I thought of doing is first the introduction, why Anandamurti ji, again to talk about him, to have a discourse on him, to think of even a discourse on him. And then yoga psychology, because that is something which is the very foundation of his enlightening philosophy, or an individual self's quest. And this is why the first thing is to talk about yoga and psychology, because this is the person who tried to bring forth these two schools, yoga and psychology, together. And we'll see in subsequent slides how that amalgamation takes place. जो योगा और साइकोलॉजी का जो ये एमालगेशन है, उसको वहां पे अप्रोच एक रखा है. उसके बाद आता है, क्योंकि योगा और साइकोलॉजी दोनों के फाउंडेशनल फिलोसफीज हैं, जो कि आनंद मूर्ति जी की पूरी फिलोसॉफिकल अगर ओरिएंटेशन देखा जाए तो. उसके बाद आता है तंत्र और मिस्टिसिज्म. वो खुद को ऑब्वियसली एक मिस्टिक मानते थे, वो एक मिस्टिकल ट्रेडिशन को बिलोंग करते थे, और उसमें तंत्र का जो रोल है वो बहुत ज्यादा है. और इस बिकॉज ये तंत्र के बारे में मैं जस्ट पढ़ना शुरू की हूँ, तो इतना ज्यादा मैं इसके ऊपर अभी कमेंट करने के पक्ष में मैं नहीं हूँ. आई एम नॉट इन अ पोजिशन टू कमेंट too much on tantra and mysticism. Of course, India has been a tradition of mystical different approaches to mysticism. So and he himself used to call him as mystic. So that way tantra, the fusion of tantra and mystical element, because tantra itself is mystical. So that also is a foundational approach. Similarly, the third approach is microvita. Microvita is something, even science, especially in physics, this has also been explored. And while going through this notion, we have a professor that also I think I'll refer to that later. So microvita is going to be one of the chapters. Neo-humanism, which is his aim actually, from divine understanding, from an individual enlightened perspective to the world, to a society, how this shift takes place is the culmination that culminates in neo-humanism. And this is what is one of the aims. Philology, with the construction of language, terms, words, and this is one of the predominant structures of human civilization, that the development of language. And there this role of Anandamurti in the development of language and the structures of language will be prominent. And then comes the social dynamic. So from new humanism, so if you see yoga, psychology, tantra, microvita, till this portion, it is about the self, it is about the consciousness, it is about the metaphysical approach. And then neo-humanism, philology, social dynamics, these are social approaches to life, to philosophy, to his what are the philanthropic things he thought of, which he envisioned a world. And then comes the music, a life force, art and literature. Music, a life force, which is predominantly an aesthetic approach to life. And then art and literature, which is also in a way foundational. Why? Because he specifically highlighted the role of art and especially the literatures in the development of human society. And then comes the Socio-Economic Theory, which is commonly known as Prout. And then women emancipation, which cannot be avoided when we talk of Anandamurti ji. And then the conclusion. Now, while starting it, first, at least we should know where to conclude. And this is why I also try to give a brief conclusion. That conclusion actually serves as a what you call motivating factor, why to do the whole of this discourse. So just to introduce that why, as I already said, these are the two fundamental aims with which I started. And then why this Anandamurti again and again we need to talk about. So one is the legacy which he left behind. It is a very, very rich philosophical tradition, which the irony is most of the philosophers, most of the teachers, and most of the schools in philosophy we run in across India, and I think even elsewhere across the globe, we do not consider Anandamurti as a technical academic philosopher. And this is the biggest challenge which we are now facing. And one of the aims is to establish him as a philosopher in mainstream philosophy, because it is making it and trying to make it relevant for the individual and the socio-economic development of the country. So say, for example, if the whole world is going through crisis, and in every age these crises pop in, and then how to mitigate this crisis. So and then in every age there is a thinker, there is a philosopher who comes, there is a revolutionary who comes and gives us some ray of light. But many a times we have seen, and that is very true of the fact in Indian philosophy, that most of the thinkers who actually shown a path, shown a way, basing both theory and practice, that philosopher has been neglected. Because I think either you have to be somebody who is either seated as a guru, or become a god eventually, or you will be sidelined for eternity. And this is the aim, this is a guiding force perhaps in Anandamurti, that he constantly struggled to offer us a philosophy and also offer us a social system. But then none of the academic fraternity had given that contribution into consideration. And this is my sincere urge to through this project, is to again establish him as a philosopher. So his philosophical principles for social welfare aims at governing an egalitarian society. So when we talk of egalitarianism, when we talk of giving a model for social order, social justice, and also justice per se in the world, then we have many thinkers, many philosophers who came and gave models. But here is a thinker who gave a model after a self gets enlightened. Now, and not only that, he did not simply show or pointed that you need to enlighten yourself, but he also showed it showed us different ways. हमें ऐसे बहुत से मार्ग उन्होंने बताए, ऐसे बहुत से अप्रोच हमको दिए, जिसके थ्रू एक व्यक्ति, जिसको हम आत्मन बोलते हैं, इंडिविजुअल सोल, अपने आप को हाईएस्ट नॉलेज के फॉर्म में एलिवेट करके उसके बाद वो जब सोसाइटी में जाता है तो वो सोशल वेलफेयर के काम में कैसे खुद को वहां अपने आप को छोड़ता है. एंड दिस इज व्हाट इज द नोवेल्टी व्हिच आई सी इन him, and this is why it is a blend of theory and practice, and this novelty needs to be highlighted. And अगर हम उस चीज को अगर और थोड़ा बेहतर तरीके से देखें, जो कि मैं इंट्रोडक्शन में थोड़ा लंबे तरीके से उसको एस्टेब्लिश करना चाहती हूँ, वो ये है कि हम वो सरकार की अपनी फिलॉसफी में आती है कि there are four central elements, and there is this cosmos, universe, and there is this mind in it, that is human mind, and the spirit, the guiding force. Now this spirit is that spirit which I discussed, I thought of discussing it in Microvita, and the society at large where we live, our social life, political life, religious life, fanatic life, everything is incorporated in that. अगर हम उनकी डेवलपमेंटल अप्रोच को अगर देखें, तो मैं इन 3 अप्रोच में उनको समराइज करना चाहती हूँ उस टेक्स्ट में, कि उनकी जो पूरी फिलोसॉफिकल डेवलपमेंट है, या तो एपिस्टेमोलॉजिकल है, जहां वो तंत्र साधना की बात करते हैं, साइकोलॉजी की बात करते हैं, योगा की बात करते हैं, वहां आता है आपका एपिस्टेमोलॉजिकल डोमेन. तो वो गवर्न करता है कहाँ पे, स्पिरिचुअल और मेटाफिजिकल डोमेन को. सो उसके साथ उसकी जो कनेक्टिविटी है, कनेक्शन है उन दोनों में, the relationship between epistemology and the metaphysics, that metaphysics is that understanding of that reality, and the method which he gave us is in yoga psychology, specifically the one specific method which he talked frequently about was tantra. And then the ethical dimension, which covers his social, political, economic, and that overall all these things are incorporated in the ontological meaning of the self, that is I as an individual in the world. So when I maintain a relationship with the world, what kind of understanding I must be having. So that kind of philosophy which he gave as a developmental philosophy, from a self to the world. So this is actually an ontology of the transcendence, and this ontology has a social meaning, and it culminates in sociality. वो कहाँ जाता है कि एक इंडिविजुअल सेल्फ जो है वो सोशल बीइंग जब पैदा होता है तब वो सोशल बीइंग रहता है, लेकिन वो जब वो उसकी सोशलिटी ऑथेंटिक सोशलिटी नहीं होती है, और जिसके चलते वो क्या होता है, उस सोशलिटी में इतना लॉस्ट हो जाता है कि उसको रास्ते दिखाई नहीं देते. ही कैन नॉट सी where to go. And there, with his philosophy, what he tried to do, he tried to elevate that self to a certain level, and that is the highest level of understanding. And then he says, when this self becomes a social self after this enlightenment, after the understanding of the divinity, then when he comes back to society, then what transformation he could make, or what kind of social change he can contribute to the world is ये जो डायनेमिक एक फिलोसॉफिकल सर्कल जो उन्होंने बनाया है कि सेल्फ जो है वो अपने आप को एलिवेट करके फिर देन दैट सेल्फ कम्स टू द वर्ल्ड एंड सर्व्स द वर्ल्ड. सो दैट बिकम्स अ स्पिरिचुअल काइंड ऑफ सोशलिज्म व्हिच ही वांटेड टू एस्टैब्लिश. So initially when I was reading Anandamurti, and then somewhere I tried to relate it with social approach, I mean socialism, or even in communist approach. So it may sound that he is somewhere having a lineage towards communism or socialism, but no, because it is equally important for the spiritual upliftment, जो कि materialism में भी नहीं है, socialism में भी नहीं है. So the spiritual socialism is what we need to focus, and this is what is one of the novelties, again another novelty of Anandamurti. So the diversity has also been जो highlight किया गया है, इस चीज को भी मैं approach वहां पे एक non totalitarian attitude. अब देखिए, धर्म की बात जब आती है या फिर समाज व्यवस्था की जब बात आती है, तो हमेशा क्या होता है, हर एक चीज एक जैसा होना चाहिए, हर एक चीज एक जैसा होना चाहिए. तो एक जैसा होने से हमको ऐसा लगता है कि वहां कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं हो सकती, क्योंकि हम प्रॉब्लम को क्या करना चाहते हैं, खत्म करना चाहते हैं. जितने भी इधर सोशल प्रॉब्लम्स हो, इकोनॉमिक प्रॉब्लम्स हो, पॉलिटिकल प्रॉब्लम्स हो, उनको हम लोगों को अभी so far we have seen that if we make a totalitarian approach, if we have a universal approach, totalitarian is something very negative connotation, but then if we have a universal approach, then we think that the world order, the world will be in order. But human being, the basic nature of human being is such that when क्योंकि सब तो enlightened नहीं हो सकते, so because everybody will not be enlightened, so वो जो need है उसको कैसे mitigate करेंगे. So totalitarian approach, complete totalitarian approach, we have seen in the past that totalitarian approach only created destruction in society. And this is why diversity and not identity is what non-identity is the law of nature. And in that, how to see it through the glance of or through the glasses of Sarkar. And there he says that social circle is like that. So with this difference, there is always an evolution and involution in society. And in this evolution and involution, wherever there is a shift of power, this is what we consider is as change. And in that change, we need to understand. So a person who sees it from a distance, these different phases of change, then that person will have a very clear understanding that totalitarianism is actually wrong, and hence he talks of diversity and non-identity, and that law of nature has been approached very well in him. And this is where the spiritual kind of socialism he approached. So another significant approach is the human intellect's transcendent. So human intellect, how it transcends to a social reality. So human intelligence, human existence, and human divinity, it's an individual, it's an individual personal affair. But then it transforms into a proto-spiritual mentality, where spirituality becomes the foundation for a world order where the supreme consciousness, where the understanding of the supreme consciousness transcends itself into the world. Now, how does it do it? In the form of social liberation. So अब सपोज एक इंडिविजुअल सेल्फ एलिवेट हो गया, तो वो जो एलिवेशन है, वो एलिवेशन किस तरीके से फिर सबके एलिवेशन को लेके करता है. सो वो बोलते हैं, आनंद मूर्ति उस स्टेज को बोलते हैं, इट इज द हाईएस्ट एंड द मोस्ट वैल्यूएबल ट्रेजर ऑफ ह्यूमैनिटी. व्हाट इज इट? ही सेज दैट इट इज द अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ दिस मेंटालिटी, दैट इज द स्पिरिचुअल मेंटालिटी. सो ये जो स्पिरिचुअलिज्म व्हिच हैज बीन द एट द कोर of the liberation of the self is something which is very, very intriguing in Anandamurti. So in the yoga and psychology, where Sarkar himself tried to establish, because while reading his book, I found that he already have a notion that, because at the time when Sarkar is there, so we also need to always continually go by the context. So the context, because as this method is going to be hermeneutical, as I already said, so there the idea that yoga और psychology को अलग अलग रखा गया है. So इसीलिए आनंद मूर्ति खुद ही बोलते हैं कि psychology जो है isolate, we cannot take psychology in isolation. Psychology an integral part of philosophy, and philosophy and psychology together can construct a process, construct a method, and this is why I named it as matter to mind and mind to matter. So this process of matter to the mind, matter means the psychology is pretty much material these days. So the matter to the mind, so it goes back to the mind again. That means at the foundational level about the philosophy and consciousness at the conscious level, and then it goes back to the self again. So self, matter, and then again matter to the self. So this process of yoga psychology, which he says is an essential for the spiritual practice, and without the knowledge of the yoga psychology, a person cannot achieve that highest the aim of that supreme understanding. That person cannot reach. So yoga और psychology का जो amalgamation आनंद मूर्ति की philosophy में दिखाई देता है, जहां उन दोनों को वो एक साथ लाते हैं. क्योंकि आप अगर आज देखेंगे तो philosophy और psychology distance हो चुके हैं. चाहते दोनों ही माइंड के बारे में एक्सप्लेन करना, लेकिन फिलॉसफी भी साइकोलॉजी, क्योंकि साइकोलॉजी फिलॉसफी से हट गया है, और जिसके चलते साइकोलॉजी भी अपने वो जो ट्रेडिशनल एम है उसको एस्टेब्लिश नहीं कर पा रहा है. और इसमें ये बोलते हैं कि ये जो योगा है, योगा डज नॉट नेसेसरीली मीन प्रैक्टिसेस ऑफ जो पतंजलि योगा में जो योगासन वगैरह करते हैं. इट्स नॉट दैट. सो इट हैज अ वाइडर मीनिंग, एंड दिस इज व्हाट ही ब्रॉट in the yoga psychology, and this is And this relation, that psychology, bringing again back psychology to philosophical domain, is the aim through which I thought of incorporating one of the chapters after introduction as yoga and psychology. As I said, another very essential factor, जो कि मैंने पहले भी बोला कि एक essential factor, foundation जो रहा है आनंद मूर्ति की philosophy, वो रही है तंत्र और mysticism. तंत्र को हमेशा हमने आप अगर देखें तो पिछले 150-200 सालों में जितनी भी राइटिंग्स लिखी गई हैं, जितनी भी मतलब फिलोसॉफिकल सिस्टमेटाइजेशन या फिर हिस्टोरियोग्राफी या फिर कुछ भी हो, इन सब को लिखते हुए हमने तंत्र को जैसे एक बहुत ही टैबू जैसे हमने उसको ट्रीट किया है. सो इट इज नॉट अ टैबू. सो तंत्र हैज बीन वन ऑफ द फाउंडेशंस ऑफ इंडियन फिलोसफी, जिसको हम स्पिरिचुअलिज्म बोलते हैं. Tantra constitutes a part of that spirituality, and because the occidental thinkers, because west में बोल दिया कि भाई इंडियन फिलोसफी तो बहुत ज्यादा स्पिरिचुअल है, बहुत ज्यादा मिस्टिकल है, बहुत ज्यादा प्रैक्टिस ओरिएंटेड, अलग अलग प्रैक्टिस ओरिएंटेड है, जिसके चलते क्या हो गया, तंत्र को बहुत ज्यादा बदनाम किया गया. तो आनंद मूर्ति जी का भी अपना एक विजन रहा है. ही हिमसेल्फ बीइंग अ फिलोसोफर, उन्होंने क्या किया, तंत्र को फिर से रिवाइव करने की कोशिश की. ही वांटेड टू रिवाइव इट so that it becomes appropriate and it also becomes contemporary for the understanding of a spiritual order. So spiritual order को जानने के लिए तंत्र एक mode है, it's a method, and he wanted to establish it as a very very scientific method. But because of because there is always a parallel politics, parallel narrative which runs through, and that narrative got prominent, और जिसके चलते तंत्र को इतना ज्यादा फुलफिलमेंट नहीं मिला. और आनंद मूर्ति खुद भी चाहते थे कि उस चीज को और ज्यादा सिस्टमेटाइज किया जाए, और इसीलिए वो बोलते थे तंत्र और इवन द सुप्रीम ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ डिजायर इज नॉट फियरफुल. ये यहाँ डर की कोई गुंजाइश नहीं है. सो द फियर विच इज देयर when it comes to death, when it comes to one's own understanding, or turning inward, so there is always a fear, because we have never done that. So Anand Murti wanted to make it so relevant so that there is no fear at the end. So the fear and weakness, which are one of the which are the biggest hindrances in the path of development, in the path of any form of development, where there is fear, there is a barrier. So he says to break that fear, Tantra plays a significant role, and he wanted to establish it as a system for understanding that self. And this is really really important, and this is why very initially in another one of the chapters I thought of talking about it, because this is a method. One, this is a philosophy. Two, third, this is a path to that enlightenment. So there are three approaches which is involved in Tantra, and he himself wanted to establish it, and this is why in one of the chapters I thought of talking about it. Another very significant and very metaphysical approach to his foundation is microvita. Now, how do we have an access to microvita? Of course, it is a progressive theory. It's a holistic theory which he offered as a theory of microvita, which constitutes again three approaches. Subtle essence, because microvita itself is very subtle, and it is an essence of everything. It is conscious, because he calls it as a life force, and it is also the cause. Whatever is happening in a progressive plane, because progressive does not necessarily mean it has to be in a very chronological and a developmental and in a positive way. So whatever we consider is change is progress in a way. So it becomes an instrument. Now, how do we have an access to it? As it says, it's phenomenally and linguistically incomprehensible. We cannot see it, we cannot touch it, even its directionality, we cannot get it. It is so subtle and it is so conscious that until and unless we are in tune with it, we will not be able to understand. This is what Anandamurti talks about in his text. So, and then how do we have an access to? Of course, he gave us a way, that is through Tantra that is to the understanding of yoga and all. So these are the ways through which we can have a trace of what is this microbiota is all about. And in one of the chapters, I thought of incorporating it. However, Dharmendra ji, when I sent it, initially it was not there. Later on, when we were discussing, then Swamiji again told me that one major element is missing in this, and that is microbiota, and that has been added. And I thought of progressing it in including it in one of the chapters. Another approach to his philosophy is, of course, it's new humanism. One of my research scholars is working on new humanism of B.R. Sarkar. And this is what he aimed at. Now, from here, neo-humanism is a foundational philosophy, and it becomes an amalgamation from theory and amalgamation of theory and practice. So, neo-humanism is a theory, yet at the same time, it is practice. And why it is a practice? It has been discussed in the social dynamics. Neo-humanism as a philosophy, in this chapter, it will be discussed what is neo-humanism per se, its difference between non-humanism, post-humanism, and humanism of the traditional term. So all these philosophical jargons will be there. And later on, in subsequent chapters, when we talk of, say, social order and justice, and also with regard to the proud, so the new humanism is a clue, and also the destiny towards which it has been moving. So the social philosophical part, it has 3 chapters. One is neo-humanism, other one is social dynamics, and the third one is the progressive utilization theory, that is socio-economic philosophy, proud. So
मैम आपका नेटवर्क चला गया है।
हेलो हेलो
आ रही है आपकी आवाज 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 आ रही
जी जी ओके जी so let me share it again. I'm sorry for making it a little long, because I don't know, I thought of incorporating it all the arguments, so this is why it is making a bit longer, it's taking longer, so sorry for that.
no ma'am, it's okay.
Okay, I believe it is making sense, because see, I am a person who is a very haphazard thinker, so this is why. So nevertheless, let me just share it. Okay, so then as humanism goes, he says that it is the highest and the most valuable treasure of humanity. So so neo-humanism, humanism in a very new form, in a very elevated form, where spirituality takes the front seat, and that spirituality, though it is the very transcendental ground of humanism, but yet it will never show off in the form of bhakti kind of or fanatic kind of approach, but rather he says that it is the liberation. And because the aim is not only to liberate your own self, because this liberation is the liberation of all, and this is what it is, the proto-spiritual mentality, which becomes a primordial ground for Sarkar's approach. And then comes the art and literature contribution. I'll be a little fast now because we need to finish it in time, and then I do not want to bore everyone. So the art and literature, where he emphasized the significance of art, and he says that art and literature these things start from human. So literature, humans are capable of creating it, and art is something, it is only human who understands the beauty of art. So the aesthetic, music, art, literature, all these three are something which arose from human, not only from intelligence, but human imagination and human passion and human willingness. So that he gives two meanings to it, and he talks of that sahitya, which is defined by that which is that whose characteristics is to move with, that is move with or move along, move with others. It is the trends of life. And he says sahitya has also another meaning. He says sahita. So it is the coexistent or the welfare of everybody. So the welfare of sahitana, sahitya is something which is very beautiful. And this is where the philology chapter also is important. Why? Because each and every word has been etymologically defined, and not only that, definition not only comprehends the linguistic meaning, but also the metaphorical meaning with it. So sahita means, hit means what? It is just a welfare, but welfare is not a peripheral meaning, but very deep rooted meaning of welfare is what he wanted to bring into the fore. And this is why he says that Sahitya, literature, is not the invention of the superficial side. It is nothing called there is nothing superficial in it. Rather, it is it is the portrait of the real me. That means it comes from the inner self. So whether it is art, literature, or poetry, it comes from the inner self until and unless the person feels it. So it is the feeling element of mind which is predominant in art, whether it is art, literature, or say music. So again, it also involves ethics. So he does not necessarily wanted to say that you need to write, you need to offer, you need to construct art forms, construct art, not because you just want to do it, but because there is an inner urge, there is a need even to society. You do it, you know it, you explored it, you experienced it, and that form has been given to the others, so that others will also get inspired and they will also understand the meaning of it. So, and that is the way human development takes place. So it is a developmental model, it's a developmental theory which he wanted to give. So when he talks of music, when he talks of art, when he talks of literature, so the very foundational or transcendental aim with which he shared these are because these are for the future. We write something not only for now, we write it for future. So the future generation. So today we are talking about P.R. Sarkar because he wrote at that particular time. He gave discourses, he wrote extensively, he composed those 5018 songs. And this is the reason why now we have P.R. Sarkar. We thought of exploring his philosophy. So what we do today in our own novelty and originality, in the form of sahitya, in the form of art, in the form of music, that will be even explored in future. And this is why we always need to do according to him. Not and he also said that it should not be just for the sake of doing. And this defining literature, he says this, it's a grand, it's benevolent flow of ideas. Of course, this has been already explained, that we need to do it not just for the sake of doing, but for the sake of others, for the sake of the generations to come, for the sake that you are truly and actually wanted to do. But however, digging the truth from the history sometimes could be problematic, but these things can be avoided. So, and this is what is the essence. As I say, Sahityakar, he considers him as a seer or the seeker of the truth, and he is also the seer of the truth. And he also says that, so the person who takes up this challenge of doing, he needs to be truthful, at least to his own experience, his own passion. And this is why do we see Anandamurti's philosophy is different than the prevalent practices, prevalent philosophies at that time, because he what he experienced, he wrote it. And this is why he says that the psychological and cultural structures, he says it's a prana dharma, it is the internal self's essence. And he wanted to give it to the mass, and this is why it is important. And there is another approach which I will be highlighting there, is the ethics of responsiveness and the responsibility through music, art, fashion, ideologies, and even the political populism and all. So that also will be highlighted in there, because these things needs to be addressed. Otherwise, what happens, it will only become a popular kind of affair. But my intention is not to make him only popular. My intention is to establish Anandamurti as a thinker who has given a foundational approach even to text, literatures, Nobel laureates, and even the responsibility of them. So as I already said, one approach is the socio-economic theory. There I will be talking about all these 4 different approaches through which he himself talks about that the world is going through this kind of transformation. At one particular peak point, when material approach becomes prominent, then we have this socialist and communist approach. And then we have a dogmatic approach. Sometimes what happens, all these themes run parallelly. But when there is this narrative, when the narrative becomes strong, कोई एक narrative जब strong होता है तो उसका बोलबाला चलता है. एक particular time frame में हमने देखा होगा कम्युनिज्म बहुत पॉपुलर था. कभी कभी रिलीजियस फैनेटिसिज्म बहुत पॉपुलर होता है, और कभी कभी ये सारे थीम साथ साथ में चलते हैं. और सेल्फ सेंटर्ड अप्रोच जैसे कि कैपिटलिस्ट अप्रोच, एक पर्टिकुलर टाइम पे जब रीजन का बोलबाला चल रहा था 17th सेंचुरी से लेके 19th सेंचुरी तक, हमने देखा कि रीजन का जब बोलबाला चलता था तो ये सेल्फ सेंटर्ड कैपिटलिस्ट अप्रोच वाज वेरी वेरी प्रोमिनेंट. एंड देन केम द डीकंस्ट्रक्शन, बिकॉज वी हैड दीज बिग 2 wars, first world war and the second world war. Then suddenly the world has been shaken, and then somehow it again turned towards socialist and communist approach. And then again at a specific time, again this fanatic and religious approach. Now somewhere or the other, now across India there is this huge cry about religious ideologies and threat towards one specific religion and all. So all these dogmatic approach, material approach, and self-centered approach will have their ups and downs. And then he says the culmination, the highest end is what is a spiritual or the egalitarian approach. And his idea is to establish that egalitarian or the spiritual approach. And thanks to Swamiji, because this insight has been given by Swamiji to me, that this can be incorporated in this particular theory. And we already know Prout is a progressive utilization theory, which has these 5 fundamental central themes, that the accumulation, how the accumulation of wealth, it should be according to the permission of the society. Now, this may sound as socialist, but it is not, because there again, as I said, spiritualism always predominates first in Sarkar. So the logical distribution of resources, that again is not something any progressive state will do, especially the materialist approach or the capitalist approach will offer. So logical distribution is possible only in an egalitarian society, which Sarkar envisioned of. Individual and collective usage of potentialities. Everyone is potential of something, so that also needs to be inculcated, that value through the value system infested in it, through education and other. Even Prout also is an educationally uplifting theory. So adjustment of need and supply, that is not there, and this is why some countries are extremely poor, some countries are extremely rich, because there is no adjustment in need and supply that he envisioned of with his spiritual egalitarian kind of society. And contextualizing the needs and supply, because most of the times we cannot contextualize what happens. And I can give an example, like the country, vast country like India. So from one part to the other, we see diverse change. I mean, it is drastically changed. One part will have, from geographical to cultural to linguistic to religious, all these differences are there. So how to mitigate? Now, to do that, needs and supply of all these small pockets are different. So if we have a universal system there, then what will happen? Then because the needs are different, so if we impose a universal structure there, then things which actually are needed are not being given, or those things which are not needed for that particular section of the society may be overpoured. And this is to mitigate that, we need to contextualize it, and this is where he gives the significance of this. So the Prout, which in overall in the socio-economic theory, I thought of highlighting these with examples from this these 5 pillars of Prout. And then the last chapter will be in women emancipation, as I said, because I myself is a woman, and I also work in the women with issues related to women and gender. So and Sarkar also eventually he never considered women as somebody who is not eligible to enlighten, because most of the traditional writings, and he himself says that in the social order of this hierarchy, what happens at a particular time, women start the status of women started degrading. And which is, he says that now is the time when women can also think of elevating themselves. And how does she do that? He said, let women be the vanguard of the new revolution. So the new revolution means the theory which he offered for the world to practice, for the world to elevate themselves, for a new social order which he himself envisioned. So there he says to abolish the dogma and the liberate women from the psychic exploitation. Now this is he considers it as a psychic exploitation. Why? Because of this chronological and continual suppression of women in the history from a specific time in history, women's psychology itself has changed. So it is like, the DNA itself has changed. This is what he himself said. And women started blaming and criticizing herself because of her historicity. And like even now, the narrative which is floating across India is because of the burqa. So that could be one of the examples that, what happens that when women herself cannot understand her potential in her. So he says that women need to understand that, and this has been a tendency. He didn't blame anybody, but he says that at a specific time in the history, from a specific time in the history, ये degradation जो start हुआ है, इसके वजह से women psychologically अपने आप खुद को इतना कम महसूस कर रही है, इतना लोअर महसूस करती है कि उनको एलिवेट करना बहुत जरूरी है। और जब वो एलिवेट होगी तभी वो एक अलग टाइप का, जो सरकार ने जो सपना देखा था कि इस तरीके का एक सोसाइटी होना चाहिए या होगा, वो तो बहुत होपफुल है कि ऐसी सोसाइटी फ्यूचर में बनेगी। और इसीलिए वो कभी डरते नहीं थे लिखने से, वो कभी भी डिमोरलाइज नहीं हुए ये बोलने के लिए, ये बोलते हुए कि भाई मेरी फिलॉसफी तो कोई रिकॉग्नाइज नहीं कर रहा है, क्योंकि उनको पता था जो वो लिख रहे हैं, जो वो कर रहे हैं, वो आज नहीं तो कल दुनिया को पता चलेगी। और आप और हम जैसे ही लोग हैं जो इस प्रोसेस में इंस्ट्रूमेंट बन सकते हैं कि उनकी फिलॉसफी एक सोशल ऑर्डर, एक सोशल रियलिटी बने। और इसी एम के साथ मैंने ये एक छोटा सा मैंने एक प्रयास किया है कि मैं जितना हो सके मेरे लिमिटेड अंडरस्टैंडिंग और रीडिंग के साथ अगर मैं थोड़ा सा भी इस सागर में एक बूंद डालने की ऑफ कोर्स मैं कोशिश कर रही हूँ, लेकिन मुझे जहां तक लगता है कि अगर हम कोशिश ही नहीं करेंगे तो हम कैसे सक्सेस होंगे। और ये मेरा एक छोटा सा प्रयास और अप्रोच रहा है कि आनंद मूर्ति की फिलॉसफी को कैसे मैं फिलोसॉफिकली एस्टेब्लिश करूं। इसमें एग्जाम्पल्स ऑब्वियसली होंगे। जब मैं तंत्र के बारे में वो करूंगी उस चैप्टर में मैं सोच रही हूँ कि मैं एक्सपीरियंसेस वहां पे शेयर करूं, ऐसे जो योगीज हैं, महात्माज हैं, जो जैसे स्वामी जी हो गए जो खुद साधना करते हैं, उन साधकों से उनके एक्सपीरियंसेस लेके कैसे इस चीज को एक्चुअली में एक नॉलेज ट्रेडिशन में और एक मेथड के रूप में हम सिखा सकें, तो ये बहुत बड़ा एक कंट्रीब्यूशन रहेगा जो मुझे लगता है। और ये मेरा एक बहुत ही छोटा सा प्रयास है, मुझे माफ कीजिएगा अगर मैंने कहीं कुछ मतलब मिस इंटरप्रेट किया है पीआर सरकार की फिलॉसफी को, क्योंकि जबकि मैं बोल दी हूँ कि मैं अभी 7-8-9 महीनों से ही मैं पीआर सरकार को पढ़ रही हूँ, तो मैं तो बस एक बिगिनर हूँ, नर्सरी क्लास में हूँ पीआर सरकार को लेके। और आप लोग जो इतने फॉलोअर्स हैं, जो इतने सालों से उनको पढ़ रहे हैं, उनको एक्सपीरियंस कर रहे हैं, उनके साथ जी रहे हैं, उनके सामने तो ये मैं जो करने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ, दिस इज जस्ट nothing. So I beg your pardon if somewhere or the other I have mispresented him. So I pardon. I beg your pardon beforehand, and also that you show me some ways if I can read more and try to contribute something in this field. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for it's sorry for it's being too long maybe. बहुत सारे लोग बोर भी हो गए होंगे, मुझे माफ कीजिएगा।
मैम मुझे बहुत ही अच्छा लगा। और मैम ये आप ये स्क्रीन हटा सकते हैं?
जी मैं हटा रही हूँ।
डायरेक्ट डिस्प्ले पे आ जाओ।
जी मैं हटा दी जी। थैंक यू।
हमारे साथ राजेश जी जुड़े हुए हैं, इनका कुछ प्रश्न भी है आपसे और ये कंक्लूड भी करेंगे सेशन को।
जरूर जी।
राजेश जी।
It was privilege and really pleasure listening to you. And as you said that you are studying in nursery, so if you are a nursery student, so we PhD people are just nothing in front of you. But before saying the words of thanks to you, just I need two quick remarks from your end. First, nonetheless, all his philosophies and contributions are unique in their own way. But which one fascinates you most?
Ananda Sutram. That has been my guiding force, because I remember the first presentation I made was on Ananda Sutram, and then almost 15 days I continually read that, and then I was trying to understand it from an Advaitic perspective, from the perspective of Sankhya philosophy, because it talks about Sankhya philosophy, it starts with Sankhya philosophy. And then I was constantly arguing with Swamiji, and he said, no, it is not Advaita. Yes, it is Advaita, but it is Advaita. But then that is one of the beautiful books, and it summarizes everything: social, political, economic, and the foundational philosophy, tantra, everything. And this has been one of my very favorite books of Anandamurti ji.
Ours too. And as you talked about this burqa part, I'm just traveling in Uttar Pradesh related to the elections, and the entire election is going on the basis of this caste and communalism division. So, and we have just recently, we are going through this hijab issue in Udupi in Karnataka, which has been largely spreading to all across India. How you feel that this neo-humanism philosophy is capable of as a solution to all these narrow sentiments like caste and religion and the communalism?
So there is one approach which he talks about, is the dogmatic approach. So so basic human understanding is such: when we are born, were we born with a caste? Were we born with some kind of cover in our face? Are we born with something which ideologically can be considered as my representation, my identity to the world? No. So this is the primordial, fundamental, ontological state. That is my existence in the world. So my existence in the world, all these, now even Marx talks of that, all these are superstructures which we construct. And I think PR Sarkar would also agree that the basic fundamental structure is to mitigate the needs. Once the need is fulfilled, then we construct all these overlapping superstructures, whether it is religion or ideology or political view, anything. So I personally believe that once a person understands its true essential self, this is what he also, I believe he will also agree with it, that first is to understand one's essential true self, authentic self. Even the existentialists talk about when we are with others, we are no longer authentic, we are inauthentic, because we are already given a name by the society, by the people, by the family, and then we already have covered ourselves with different religious, cultural, linguistic, all those baggages. That does not mean that these are meaningless. They are equally meaningful, but am I that true essential self underneath all these? So he perhaps would say that let us try to understand that essential fundamental structure of your being. And he says that it is microvita. Microvita will tell you what it is. It is the guiding force. It is the spirit which will tell you. But then first you need to become presuppositionless. So to reach to that presupposition-less state, it requires struggle. And even for women, I would always say that first one needs to understand its potential, because who is the other person to tell me who am I? Do I not know who am I? So self-understanding, and then that understanding, the person, he says that the person who understands himself, the person who elevates in that knowledge, will eventually become fruitful for the society as well. So because we are too much bogged down by the opinions of others, opinions of the world, and we go by that flow. It's a politically motivated move anyways. But then what do we actually want in ourselves? As a human being, do I actually want that? Is the question perhaps everyone needs to ask.
We will explore all these in the next session or some another time. And
Yes.
Just as it has already been too long for everyone, just concluding words from my end that on behalf of Sri Anandamurti ji Vision page, I sincerely pay my gratitude to you for exploring the multi-dimensional philosophies of Sri Anandamurti ji, and your contribution will be remembered for long. And I strongly believe that it will create a new benchmark and it will pave a new way to the new researchers. It will enlighten or inspire other people. It was really nice listening to you, and hope to catch you soon
Yes.
with the things. So
Thank
many
you
thanks.
so much. I just want everyone's blessing so that at least I can, do a little, I can contribute a little towards Anandamurti ji.
नहीं,
Literally.
आपने विषयों को बहुत अच्छी तरीके से रखा। सारे
Thank you
विषयों पर
so
आपने
much.
चर्चा की, योग और मनोविज्ञान, तंत्र और रहस्यवाद, भाषा शास्त्र, संगीत और उसकी जीवन शक्ति, कला और साहित्य, बहुत ही आपने अच्छे तरीके से और लोगों को, दर्शकों को श्री आनंदमूर्ति जी के कंट्रीब्यूशन, योगदान के बारे में आपने बताया। हम चाहेंगे कि फिर आपसे एक मुलाकात होगी, तब तक के लिए
Thank you so much जी, जरूर जी, thank you.